Thanks for tuning in to VSB After the Bell. I'm your host, Gianna Chow. VSB, otherwise known as the Vancouver School Board, is located on the unceded traditional lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. The district is among the most diverse school systems in Canada, with an annual enrollment of just under 50,000 students, from kindergarten to grade 12 and adult education students. This month on the podcast, we talk about the not-so-new redesigned curriculum. The way kids learn today is very different than the way their parents learned when they were in school. No longer do we need to memorize a timetable or remember an encyclopedia of facts. There's a calculator and Google for that. The shift in today's education focuses on concepts instead of content, on how to learn rather what is learned, and on developing critical thinking skills in place of memorization. I've invited Fransoise, Renne, and Sandra Fox, who are elementary teachers, as well as Nancy Fulton and Annie Kwong, who are secondary teachers. They're here today to walk us through the redesigned curriculum and how students are learning in classrooms. Welcome, everyone.
Hi, thanks for having us.
The curriculum was redesigned in 2016. So what has changed when compared to the previous version?
Yeah, the focus of the old curriculum, at least in science and I'm sure other content areas, was much more around the content or knowledge that students had to have versus their competencies or skills. So in the old science curriculum, there were pages and pages of content goals, so information students had to remember. But modern students have access to tons of information right at their fingertips because they have the internet. So it's way more important to teach them how to access information and critically assess what sources they're using for information and how to apply that information, what to do with it once they've learned it. There's also a much larger focus on place-based learning. So placing your learning in the context of the community and the space that you're in, and more environmental content in the new curriculum, and a lot more focus on Indigenous ways of learning. And then assessment-wise, students used to take provincial exams in different subject areas, and now they take a general literacy and numeracy test rather than those subject-specific exams. So it just tests how well they can do everyday tasks involving literacy and numeracy.
I think another thing that's really different, too, with the new curriculum is the teacher has been in a way kind of like decentered in the classroom. So it used to be that the teacher would like stand in front of the class and deliver information, and students were responsible for just kind of receiving that information and not necessarily doing anything more with it than just regurgitating it on a test a few weeks later. And the whole experience in the classroom is changing. So now it's more like the students are on a learning journey and they're on that journey together. And the teacher is there to facilitate that journey and to help them to figure out where they need to go and how they're going to get there.
Yeah, I can clearly see that there's an additional focus on creative and critical thinking and communication, as well as personal and social responsibility to develop an educated citizen who can fit into this rapidly changing world. Can you provide some concrete examples for listeners? How do teachers deliver the redesigned curriculum in classrooms?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I mean, it certainly is going to look different in different classrooms depending on the learners that the teacher has sitting in front of them. And even for the same teacher, that's going to change from year to year because we are individualizing our instruction a lot more now with this new curriculum. But, you know, for example, you might have students might be given an assignment where they're creating a class newspaper together, and the class newspaper might be on a topic, a subject area that, you know, the content that you're covering. So it could be something like the fur trade or the gold rush. And then you create a newspaper and all of the students are contributing content to that paper. But the way that they're doing it is different for different kids, right? So there are some kids that might be writing articles and then they're demonstrating what they learned through that article. But then there might be other students that are making like a crossword puzzle for the newspaper. So they're taking key terms and they're showing their understanding of key terms by linking them to like vocabulary, but they're not necessarily working at the same sophisticated level that some of their peers might be in the same classroom.
But then won't the students who are at the basic level fall more behind, while the ones who are advanced, they may not feel challenged enough?
Well, I mean, the first thing you need to do is figure out where your students are. And then when you know where they are, then you can help them to get to the next step. So the fact that some students in the class may be at one point of that learning progression and others might be at another point in the learning progression, it doesn't really change the fact that we're all working together to move forward to the next step on our learning track, right? So, I mean, the teacher will help the student who needs more fundamental kind of basic help just as much as they help the students who are looking for a little bit more challenge. And it happens kind of organically because we're focusing on the skills as opposed to focusing on the knowledge.
So then how are you tracking student progress? Because now you're looking at critical thinking rather than knowing of facts.
Yeah, so now in kindergarten to grade 9, students are being graded on a proficiency scale, which gives a little bit more descriptive feedback on their skills than we have given in the past. So the different proficiency levels, there's 4 of them. Students can either be a beginning or emerging, which indicates that they have a very basic or initial understanding of what's the skill or content that we're assessing. Developing means they have a partial understanding. Applying or proficient means that they have a complete understanding. And extending means that they have a sophisticated understanding. And with my students, I usually say that this level I'm looking for a lot of detail, and they understand it so well that they would have no trouble explaining it to a classmate. And I found that having these descriptive levels rather than a percentage has helped my students have a growth mindset when it comes to developing their skills. So instead of, in the past, I've given a quiz back and they see, oh, I got 8 out of 10, and then it just goes in their bag and it's forgotten about. Now they're thinking, okay, I was at developing or I was in applying. What do I need to add to get to that next level? Or what do I still need to learn? Or what skill do I need to practice the most? Many teachers are also moving towards standards-based grading. So students are graded against a learning objective. And then the beauty of this is that as they get better and better at that skill, we forget about those past attempts. So it won't count against them in their final grade. And I also find I can be a lot more flexible in my assessment because of the focus on skills. So in my final grade, I can include more holistic information like observations of them working in class, as well as their written assignments or quizzes. Or I can even interview students who didn't do so well on a quiz and ask them for more detail than they managed to get written down. And this helps me make accommodations for students who might not do as well expressing their thoughts in writing. And as was mentioned before, students also self-assess on their growth in the core competencies, so critical thinking, personal and social skills, and communication. So they have a little bit more of a role to play in their report card, which is really nice.
So is that making it too easy for kids to pass a grade or go to the next level?
I don't think it does. I still hold my students to a fairly high standard. So in my class, if you don't have like a beginning or an emerging does indicate an initial understanding of a skill or of certain content. And if you haven't met that, I sit down with that student and we go over what was missing from their assessment. And then usually they have a chance to do a reassessment, whether that is taking that quiz or that test again, or whether that is me looking at their next assignment and looking for improvement in those little areas. It's a lot more flexible, but I wouldn't say it's easier.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely, I think it helps an individual grow and learn from it rather than feel defeated by a single mark.
Yeah, I think in real life, there's very few things that we only get one shot at.
Yeah. That's a very true point. Sandra, how about from the elementary perspective?
Yeah, I'll tag on to what Nancy was saying. And with that focus on skill development rather than so much the product or the knowledge, it gives us lots of opportunities to interact with the students and give them timely feedback on how they're doing, rather than waiting for that project to come in or the test result to give them some kind of feedback through a mark. So we're identifying how they're doing in the process and what skills they're developing and what their next step is. And a lot of teachers in the elementary level are focused on 3 questions to guide assessment, both from the teacher's point of view and from the self-assessment for students, which is where am I now, where am I going, and how am I going to get there? So we're looking at what are you doing now that's meeting the standards, and then what's your next step? And then what supports can you give yourself, what supports can the teachers give you, and what supports can the rest of your community, such as your caregivers, provide. And students have multiple chances to show their learning through different projects, through different activities in class. And it is seen as this is ongoing. So especially in elementary where we've got the whole year rather than one semester with students, they get multiple chances to show the development of skills. And I think Fransoise mentioned earlier, there's chances for revisiting skills and content and developing those ways of learning.
So for the younger kids who may not be able to grasp that level yet, how do you involve the caregivers to make sure, that everyone's working together?
So through talks at the door when people are picking up their children, or phone calls, emails, some teachers are using digital portfolios where the student, the teacher, and the families are involved in talking about what the student's strengths are and what their next steps are and what can be done. So rather than waiting for the report card to come home, it's this timely feedback where both the student, or all of the student, the family, and the teacher are involved in identifying what can be done at school and at home to support that.
I'd like to pivot here a little bit. I want to ask Annie, because you mentioned that you were teaching for, this is your 23rd year teaching. Have you seen a change in student learning outcomes since the redesigned curriculum was implemented?
Definitely, yes. I can see students being more proactive about their learning. And that is something that as an educator, I believe that's a big responsibility for us to show students that they are lifelong learners. When we engage them in a meaningful way and allow them to think about the purpose of their learning and offer them choice on how they will learn, gives all students an opportunity to make it and own it. I really believe it's important to allow students to take on that responsibility of their own learning. And today's learners are much more sophisticated. And no longer, as we mentioned before, that teachers are not the gatekeepers of knowledge anymore. Instead, students can access all that content. We just provide them the opportunity to develop the skills, and to know what to do with that information. And that's where those critical communication, the critical thinking skills come in. I believe that learners actually want a meaningful education where they are seen and heard as who they are, and this new redesigned curriculum definitely allows teachers to do that.
And how about in elementary?
So I can give an example from a math perspective, as far as giving students more opportunities to explore in math rather than having a set of math facts or a set of algorithms to memorize and apply. So lots more problem solving and experimenting with solutions and honoring mistakes and what we can learn from them, and not having mistakes as being something scary and to be avoided, that it really does benefit us, and just being able to approach problems in a multiple ways and learning different strategies to recognize that there's a lot of exploration and learning. And it also recognizes that students come to school with a certain amount of knowledge from their cultures and from their home lives, and that those can be valued rather than having like a single algorithm that's held up as the most important one. So being culturally responsive and respectful and honoring that there's knowledge that is in community and held in homes and families, and that's valuable in the learning process as well.
Sounds like it's definitely more open, this new way of learning, and it allows for greater flexibility. Have you seen this type of curriculum be implemented in other parts of the world then? And what was the feedback?
Well, one thing that I found really interesting, actually, when I joined the CAM team last year, we attended a formative assessment conference that was like a virtual conference with educators from all around the world. And it was 3 days long, and a number of the presenters actually referenced the BC curriculum in their talks, because they were talking about how, we need to move away from a focus on knowledge and towards a focus on competency or skills, as they're doing in British Columbia, Canada, So that was really interesting for me to see that, not only are we recognizing it here in BC, but there are other parts of the world where they're looking to what we're doing and using it as an example, and kind of we're sort of creating a benchmark that other districts are moving towards as they make these changes in their own systems.
It's great to hear that a public school system is being seen as a thought leader.
Yeah.
When this new curriculum was actually, or the redesigned curriculum was brought forward to us, I had a visiting professor from one of the universities, one of the Asian countries, and they were very impressed to see this curriculum. They were in my foods room watching us work, and just very different from what they were used to. And, I used the example where one of the parents had approached me too and said that, you don't give enough homework to our kids. Right. And, we had a very long discussion around that, because I really believe, learning doesn't have to be done through homework. And again, this new way of teaching and learning, it changes the way we think about that. Mm-hmm. And I think it's hard or challenging for some families to see that right now. But if we really use that time in the classroom where the learning should be happening and then going home to practice, it's different. That's what it is.
So speaking of homework, Annie, I've heard this as well from other parents, is it's not tough enough. I want my kid to come home loaded with homework. They need to do 5 hours of homework. What is your response to that?
Homework. I mean, nobody likes homework. That's the truth, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mentioned before, like when we have time with our students in the classroom, our instructional minutes that we have with them are very valuable, and we need to make them meaningful. And when we make them meaningful and they have the chance to learn, ask questions, interact with their peers, that's when the real learning happens.
In school.
Yes. And when they learn, and what we hope for is they go home and they can rest. They can spend time with their families, connecting, building those relationships. Because again, when we have happy kids coming to school who are in the best mindset, that's when the learning happens again. Not because I stayed up till 1:30, 2 o'clock doing my homework that I couldn't finish, that I didn't understand. So
that was me.
There's definitely a lot of views that we have to work on to change. And again, I mentioned before, like mental health is so important today. Yeah. And we want to be able to provide that opportunity for students to simply rest. And
So just because they're not coming home with homework doesn't mean they're not learning in school.
Oh, I know. Yes, exactly. I mean, I know school systems, they give homework to kindergartners. There's kids who get home right away and they have 4 to 5 hours of homework and they are in elementary school. And, what's most important for them, honestly, again, is that connection. They need to play. They need interaction with their caregivers and their families. And that, again, is going to help them with their development rather than sitting at the table and doing rote work for 2 to 3 to 4 hours a night.
And Also, to those parents that are asking for more homework because they feel like school needs to be hard, I would ask them to really reflect, like, what's the point of school and what's the point of education? Don't we want students to learn? Like, why are you trying to create obstacles or roadblocks for them to jump over and hoops for them to jump through? We should be guiding them on this learning journey and encouraging them and instilling them with the confidence that they can actually do this, right? Giving them belief in themselves as learners and the skills that they have that are going to take them out of school and into the great wide world where they can continue this learning journey. Like, it's a lifelong process. It's not going to stop when we graduate from grade 12.
Yeah, and you want them to want to learn.
Yeah, exactly.
I also see this time after school as a time where students can really develop as humans. And a lot of our students have a very diverse set of hobbies that they practice outside of school. So we have students doing various musical instruments, various sports, and a lot of my students don't get home until dinner time anyways because they're developing these other sets of skills. School isn't the only place that you learn. So I think that having students have a little bit of say over how they spend their time and having the time to do these extracurricular activities helps them be well-rounded and helps teach them about time management and also like give them some autonomy over what they do with their time.
Yeah, that's very true. At letting kids feel that autonomy and let them make those decisions, because when they're an adult, they're going to have to make those decisions, and practicing when you're young is important. And speaking of activities, I know most parents, they spend majority of their time driving their kids from A to B activity because they want their child to be well-rounded, not just at school, but they need to be athletic, they need to be musical, they need to be, there's a whole bunch of other things. So I think this just adds to a well-rounded human being that we're trying to build. What are the barriers or challenges that you've seen or experienced since this redesigned curriculum was implemented?
Yeah, I think most teachers would tell you that a big barrier is time from both a teacher and a student perspective. So redesigning our practice takes time, and we're often creating brand new resources ourselves while also grading, lesson planning, communicating with families and other staff. So the progress can happen really slowly. Often there are days when teachers are with students from the very first bell to the very end bell, and then we have after school extracurricular activities to supervise, or maybe we need to go home because our own families need us. So personalization, which is a real big aspect of the curriculum, it just takes time. And I think that that's something teachers struggle with. From a student perspective, the new curriculum emphasizes meeting students at the level that they're at and moving forward from there. But students are still grouped by their age, and courses have a set start and end time. Especially, I think this is a bigger pressure in secondary. So giving our students the time they need to get enough practice at certain skills or enough time to really understand some of the content, it just doesn't happen in one semester or even one school year sometimes. So we have this very diverse group of students that we are trying to meet where they're at, and having a set time frame can be a real challenge because all students learn at different paces. And there's a bit of time pressure on teachers to make sure that we get through all the content so that students are prepared for the next level. So I think time is a real sense of pressure for teachers and students.
Any type of change behavior is difficult, and this redesigned curriculum is very different from how teachers were taught before. Our chat has shown us that today we live in a technology-rich world where communication is instant and information is immediately accessible. The way we interact with each other personally, socially, and at work has changed forever. This is the world our students are entering, and BC's redesigned curriculum is redesigned to respond to this demanding new world. Thank you for taking the time to join us today, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We have a reoccurring segment on the show called Matter of the Month, where we address the most talked about topics. For this month, we'll look into the district's decision to continue the semester model with an increase in flexible instructional time, otherwise known as FIT, for all secondary students. Allison Ogden and Rick Lopez, who are educators and directors of instruction, as well as Susan Chichancho, grade 11 student, and Edison Hui, grade 12 student, are here today to walk us through the semester system. So first off, Allison, can you walk us through what exactly changed?
Yeah, it's a great question. So pre-pandemic, Vancouver schools operated on a linear system. So students took 8 courses at one time, 4 on day 1, 4 on day 2, and that just rotated throughout the year. Because of the pandemic and the need to cohort students, our district and many other surrounding metro districts chose to go to a quarter model where students took only 2 courses at one time, 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon, for a period of between 8 to 10 weeks. And they did that for 4 kind of equal sessions over the year. Moving out after that year, looking back at feedback that we'd received from district survey, district forum with students from across the district in 2019, where students indicated that they really preferred taking fewer courses at one time. And of course, the information and feedback that we gathered during the quarter model, where again, we heard those sentiments echoed, where students appreciated not having to focus on 8 courses at one time. We chose to move into a semester model. We committed to doing that for 2 years in order to give us a real opportunity to see how it was working for students and take the necessary time to connect with students and families and teachers to really dig into a schedule model moving forward that would best support student learning. So that's the process that we're here to talk about today as well.
So it went from a linear system pre-pandemic and then a quarterly system during the pandemic. And then in 2022, as things were sort of getting back to normal, as people were coming back to school in person, it became a semester model. So Edison and Susan, from a student's perspective, can you tell us your thoughts on the semester model now that you've been trying it out for 2 years?
I think that it's been a really big benefit in my opinion. Like going into the semester system from the quarterly system, I went from something super condensed to something a little less condensed. And this time around, I actually got to focus a lot more on the 4 subjects over the 15 weeks that we had. Compared to the linear system, I didn't have to focus as much on like switching day 1, day 2, having to focus on 8 courses over the year. I was able to be more attentive to my 4 subjects, and especially being in my senior year, I'm having my 2 AP courses at the start of the year. So being able to focus on those 2 courses was really important for me. And also going into grade 12, I know that next year I'm going into university. So kind of getting that emulating schedule from university really, I believe, will help me transition into my university life.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of pressure with the linear system. Having 8 courses for the entire school year is stressful, switching from day 1 to day 2. And I think the semester system brings in a fine balance between the linear system, where you had 8 courses to focus on for the whole school year, and the quarter system, where you had 2 courses for only 10 weeks. So it's like not too condensed, and it's also not too spread out and too much to juggle, if that makes sense. I like the semester system because it creates more opportunities for students to not only focus on 4 subjects for 4 months, but they also get to engage in activities that help enrich their learning and focus more on being well-rounded as a student, which I think is very important preparing someone for post-secondary or even helping a grade 7 transition into high school and actually build these life skills that they really need. Yeah.
Definitely. I know going into the semester system, it's allowed me to not only work, but I've been able to give back to the community and start volunteering a lot more, building a lot of leadership skills, as well as do more sports and activities, just overall learn not just inside of the classroom, but outside of it as well.
Right. It gives you more opportunity to not just focus on the academics, but the extracurricular activities and even to work to help you maybe build some financial stature as you head to post-secondary. I also know when I was going to high school, it was a linear system, and it was kind of a big shock for me when I went to post-secondary because it is a bit of a change in mindset. And if I was better prepared in high school, then, university itself is a big change. And so it's just, if you can take one thing off the checklist, then that would help you transition into post-secondary. So as I mentioned, there was an engagement. Rick, can you tell us what was the feedback that you heard? I know we reached out to students and their families and staff.
Yeah, so we had a engagement throughout with all the stakeholders, and we had over 14,000 people respond, which was just absolutely amazing. So I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to provide us that feedback and to be part of the engagement process. And so we sent a survey out, and we got feedback from students, families, and staff. And with regards to the semester system, about 68% of students were in favor of the semester system, about 57% of families, and then about 27% of staff. So we can see the students and families definitely preferred the semester system. And then we also did some engagement with going into schools and visiting schools and talking to kids in classrooms as well, which we got a lot of valuable feedback from that as well. We also got some information from all the stakeholders on FIT. And with regards to FIT, it came back, the information that came back was 85% of students were in favor of FIT to continue, 65% of families, and 54% of staff. So we can see that flexible instructional time was, all the stakeholders were in favor of that. And giving the students that flexibility to work different things into their learning day was definitely something very valuable for them.
I will say that the engagement, it was kind of a good thing to see the different segment audience groups. So with students separated from families, separated from staff, and there was a really strong student voice component of this engagement because they were able to identify themselves as a particular group. It showed that almost 70% of them did prefer semester, and using that feedback, that's how the district came to the decision to continue with semester. Now, also through the engagement, we heard there were some concerns, especially from staff, that the semester model creates an uneven workload for teachers. How are you going to address this?
Well, just for some context and understanding, so in a linear model, teachers, their prep is 80 minutes, approximately 80 minutes every other day. So moving into a semester model means that teachers only get that prep block or that 80 minutes in one of those semesters, which absolutely creates some pressure in the semester where they don't have that prep block. And we know that teachers are very conscientious, hardworking, and really want to have high quality classroom and learning experiences for students and need time in order to do that. So with FIT and moving forward, teachers, because FIT is instructional time, they will be able to take some of their prep time during FIT as well. So in the coming year, in addition to teachers having their prep block in one semester, in the semester where that prep block isn't scheduled, they will be able to have 40 minutes a week of prep time. And there's ongoing discussions as well. There's a district working group that involves teachers and administrators who continue to have the conversations around how we can address those pressures for teachers in classrooms.
So for a non-educator like myself, who may not entirely have followed that. So is it that before in the linear system, there was 80 minutes every other day that the teacher had to prepare for the class that they're going to teach? And then the semester model, they have the 80 minutes, but it's only during that semester, so like half of the year.
Correct.
And then the other half of the year, they have 40 minutes?
40 minutes a week.
40
Yes.
minutes a week to
Yeah,
prepare.
so they'll go from one semester, in a semester model, teachers will have 80 minutes every day of prep time in order to prep for their classes, collaborate with colleagues, connect with various supports for students. And in the other semester where they're teaching those 4 classes, they will have 40 minutes a week of prep time to do that work.
Okay. And it's still being worked on with the working group to address these concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Rick mentioned earlier, when we also had an opportunity to go out as directors of instruction and speak with teachers and hear their concerns about not only that, but the impact on student learning. So all of that information that we heard from them has been brought forward, and we're continuing to have the conversations, because at the end of the day, it's about student learning and supporting what's in the best interest of students moving forward.
We also heard from caregivers that some of them are worried the students won't use their fit time to study or learn, because essentially you have this free block of time to do whatever you want to do. So with Edison and Susan as being students, can you help us set the record straight? Let listeners know, what do you do during your fit time? What do your friends do during their fit time?
Definitely. So for me, I really do one of 2 things. I either study for my courses, especially doing APs like I mentioned. This gives me an opportunity to catch up on missed works when I'm sick, or just ask general questions. And whenever I just don't understand something, I can ask or consult a teacher. That way I'm able to kind of get a better understanding, and addressing one of the concerns with the semester system without all the time to like really consolidate all of the information that you would be able to in that 32 weeks in the linear system. The fit time really gives me the opportunity to kind of get an edge and get back some of that time to really understand some of the concepts. And then the second thing I really do with it is I like to exercise. I'm a very fit person. I play a lot of sports. So I like to take the time, go down to the PE gym and just get a workout in. And it's given me an opportunity to not just work out my brain, but my body as well.
Mm-hmm. So I know we put a lot of a lot of effort into not only maintaining your mental well-being, but the physical well-being is also very important too.
Definitely. Just overall building a well-rounded student, right?
I use Fit Time to read, and as Edison said, I also use it to consult teachers, ask for help, do extra homework. I also use Fit Time as a time for reflection sometimes. It's good to have some time in your day to reflect and journal, or, see how the week is going. I also use Fit Time as a way to volunteer or participate in club activities. Some meetings go on during Fit Time. And so it really helps a student to be flexible, like to see which areas they need to improve, and also get the guidance from the teachers in order to reach that level of improvement. The beauty with Fit Time is that it's supervised time. The students have the autonomy to do whatever it is that they want to do, but the teachers are there to help guide them to reach what it is that they need to do. Whereas when you have an activity after school, it's unsupervised, there's a safety problem. And so Fit Time really helps give students the opportunity to not only do schoolwork, but do whatever it is that they feel like doing with supervision and with the guidance of adults.
So are you guys sitting in a classroom, or are you kind of wherever you are in the school?
It depends. During Fit Time, we are advised to be in a classroom setting where a teacher can supervise us. Sometimes you could be walking around doing particular activities, like sometimes you find people doing photography and they're practicing their pictures, and then they have to send that information to the teacher. So there is some flexibility with where you can go, but there are teachers everywhere monitoring around and making sure that everyone is in a classroom.
So to me, as a parent, it sounds like, FIT is really giving students the autonomy to decide what they want to do. And that's helping them build their own motivation to decide, prioritize the tasks that need to be. And that's also setting them up for the real world, because in the real world, even in post-secondary, you're not going to have your teacher reminding you to finish your homework. And when you're working, you're not going to have your supervisor reminding you to finish your deadline. You're just going to have to go and do it. And so that skill of practicing that is happening earlier in life.
Yeah, definitely building a lot more independence and intrinsic motivation.
Through the engagement, we also heard about student learning and how it may lag as a result of the semester model. So for instance, some courses like PE, parents have expressed it's better off in a linear system to always practice that physical activity throughout the whole year rather than just half a year. As educators, what do you have to say? What do you have in response to that?
Yeah, as a former PE teacher, it's a great question. Thank you. So I know part of the PE curriculum is, and part of our goal as physical education teachers is to teach students about lifelong learning and lifelong activity. So within the curriculum, we'll be doing numerous different activities and games and exposing students to a variety of different choices they can do to be physically active. And that can include field trips to the community center or to local facilities. And hopefully through that process, we're teaching the students the benefits of daily physical activity. So, and it's teaching them to take ownership of that on their own as well. So in a semester, we'd have the PE for one semester, but hopefully we've taught the students the importance of physical activity, whether that's walking to and from school, going for a bike ride, going to your local community center, shooting some baskets, going for a swim. There's lots of amazing facilities around that they can use. And part of that PE curriculum is teaching them to access those facilities and then to become a lifelong learner and to engage in that lifelong physical activity and to understand the benefits of it for both your mental health and academically, as well as the students had brought up as well, that being that well-rounded learner, being able to study in the classroom, but then also understanding the need to get a physical break and to get exercise and activity or be part of a club. All that extracurricular piece is also very important for that well-rounded student.
But what about something like math, that has that foundation? You kind of need to practice it on a regular basis. If you learn it for half the year, what if you forget it for the next half and, the equations as they become more complex? How are you going to combat that?
Well, and that's absolutely a concern that we hear from students, that we hear from parents. And, it's part of a teacher's instructional practice to, when classes begin, to do a bit of a scan to see where students are at and to begin with a review to get everybody up to speed. So just like after a summer away from learning, teachers will have those instructional practices in classes where they get students up to speed. And to echo what Rick was talking about, ideally, with the curriculum that was implemented in 2016, there's a lot of cross-curricular opportunities for learning. So we're trying to move away from having these compartmentalized skills and abilities and have them stretch across those curricular areas. What students are learning in math is used in science and those sorts of things. So as we work more towards that and instructional practices develop, we will certainly be addressing the concerns that students and parents bring about that.
Yeah, that is true. I think about riding a bike. And if you haven't ridden one in 5 years, maybe at first you're a little nervous on the bike, but you never really forget those skills. And after practicing for a day or two, you're right back on it. So I see that is similar for the other subjects too. Well, thanks guys for being on the podcast today and taking the time to provide more insight to the district's decision. Sounds like the district is lining up the semester model with the majority of other school districts and aligning with how students will learn in post-secondary, as that's what they'll use there. Based on what the students have said today, this change will set kids up for success in the future. Thanks for tuning in to VSB After the Bell. We release episodes monthly on the last Thursday of the month. We'll catch up with you then. VSB After the Bell, produced by the VSB Communications Department. Special thanks to music teacher Mr. Bonnell and Nightingale Elementary students for the original theme song. Keep up to date with district news. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at VSB39 or Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Vancouver School Board. And don't forget to subscribe to VSB After the Bell on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
After the bell.